name is Pierre Kiam. I'm a chef from Senegal and I'm based here in New York City. And what I do with my company, Yolele, we work with cooperatives in West Africa, women-owned cooperatives, and we bring products to improve their livelihood. Products like fonio. Fonio is this ancient grain that's great for the environment because it's drought resistant. And what we do, we also introduce it.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lorna Maseko from South Africa. I'm a celebrity chef and TV personality, and it's an absolute honor to be in Stockholm for the very first time and be at Eat Forum for the very first time. I'm learning so much. I'm meeting some amazing people. So I hope you guys are having as much fun as I'm having fun. How are you guys doing? Good? Fantastic. So today we're going to have some really amazing chefs. We're going to have fun. Food is life. So I hope you guys are as vibrant as I'm feeling about this next session. Are you? Thank God. So I'm going to ask you to get up. I like getting free massages, right, at these kind of forums because you guys have just eaten, right? So you're feeling a little bit lethargic. So get up. Don't worry. It's not going to be too scary. Turn around this way and massage the shoulders of the person in front of you for at least like 10 seconds. You'll thank me later. Feeling good? Nice. And then turn around to the person next to you on the other side. Yeah. That feels good, right? After all that good food. Okay, then face me and just kind of like shake it off. And I like to do the wind and pass the food energy from the one person to the other. Yeah. Fantastic. You can sit down. We're going to kick off a food session with somebody I absolutely admire. He's a global chef and focuses on food in Nigeria. He's worked with some phenomenal people around the world. He's also kind of cute as well. I think the girls in Nigeria love him and around the world. So when you look at him, you'll let me know what you think. Please put your hands together for Michael Elégbèdé from Nigeria. What did I say? Awesome. How are you feeling today?
Feeling great.
Great. And how are you finding Stockholm, your first time?
Second time.
Yes.
It's been amazing. Always a great welcome.
Yeah. I guess let's just shoot into it. You know, Michael, the kind of, or Chef Michael rather, the conversation today is about the planetary health diet. Is it a new fad or is it a long-term goal? What are your views around that?
Is it a new fad or a long-time goal? I think it's a little bit of both, right? Yeah. For something to become a long-term goal, it has to start as a fad. And I think globally we're beginning to see the importance and the conversations about planetary diets are becoming more prominent. Long-term goals are what we're talking about right now. How do we accomplish the best planetary diet we can?
I think as a celebrity chef, as a chef that works around the world, how do you start kind of educating people from ground level? It's all good and well that we're having these great conversations and these discussions, but how do we then start actioning everything that we've learned from here?
We begin at a conversation, and we have some incredible chefs in here. Chef Manifesto.
Whoop.
And we lead that action by what we do in our kitchens, in our restaurants, in our dinners, in the conversations that we have. And people begin to follow, companies begin to follow, home cooks begin to follow, because chefs drive the culinary and food market globally.
Yeah, I know in South Africa, actually the Chef's Manifesto team was in South Africa last year, which was absolutely amazing. And we got to visit some farmers in South Africa. And one of the things that kind of stood out was that it's really hard for just the average or the normal South African to get indigenous plants in South Africa. How different is it in Nigeria?
Actually quite different. I was very surprised by what I found when we were in South Africa. You know, biodiversity is very, very important. And if we all use the same ingredient, that's not good for anyone, including our planet. Seeing that the most indigenous herbs in South Africa weren't accessible and available to South Africans was very heartbreaking. In Nigeria, it's similar in when it comes to the spices that we use. A lot of people just look for the easiest way to season their food rather than looking at the indigenous spices that that has so many micronutrients and essential oils that we've been using for generations. So I look forward to not necessarily going back to the past, but realizing what it means to move forward.
Yeah.
How do we reintroduce the best form of what used to be to how the future is going to be?
I mean, we spoke about this earlier. We spoke about how, for example, you know, I grew up eating the Future 50 foods as a kid. And at the time, that is kind of seen as somebody who doesn't have enough money to have other beautiful ingredients. And as you grow older, you know, you're having caviar and you're having all this expensive stuff. Sometimes you don't even know that you're having maybe fish that isn't sustainable or farmed well. And then we're back here trying to convince people, no, it doesn't have to be like that. It can actually be this way, but finding interesting ways of cooking this food. What are your thoughts around that? Because, I mean, essentially, you know, the South African market and Nigerian affluent market is pretty much similar when it comes to indigenous food.
Yeah, I mean, in Nigeria especially, you know, I remember trying to cook for a very affluent family, and they gave me specifications. This is what you must use. You have to use foie gras, you have to use caviar, you have to use salmon. And I think it's about educating. And I told them, we're in Nigeria, none of these things are in our water. So you're literally getting the worst of these ingredients that you want to use for your meal. And I explained to them my process of procuring the ingredients that I use. I go to the farms to get my vegetables. I go to the fish market to get the best seafood. And with my knowledge in these ingredients, I'm able to get the best that is available. So I can create the most delicious food and healthy food. So educating them about those processes and redirecting their misconception about food and ingredients.
Fantastic, I love that. Now, obviously, we gathered, you know, chefs from around the world through Chefs Manifesto, both here in Stockholm and we did it in South Africa. What is the one thing that you think you've learned the most regarding everybody's indigenous produce that they bring together, the different knowledge of the different chefs, home cooks that we have in the group?
I mean, it's been incredible. Such a learning experience. Every trip, every conference, I'm always experiencing something absolutely new, from potatoes from Peru to spices from Nima. It's always an educative experience because we're chefs. We're very passionate about the food that we cook, and we want to share that. So every time we come together, it's always us sharing spices, techniques, and also the difficulties that we go through in our different regions, and looking at how we can share found solutions that can help people in different regions. So something that I found as a solution in Nigeria could help someone in Peru and vice versa.
Yeah.
And you know, I've had some, you know, speaking to chefs who have very, very sustainable restaurant. You know, Justin is very, very driven about sustainability in his restaurant, and having his insight on what that can look like in Nigeria is very insightful. And that exchange of information globally is making such a strong impact.
Absolutely. Did you guys attend the Food Forever dinner last night? Any of you? Oh, you missed out. Nobody did?
Amazing.
You did? How did you find it? Delicious, right? I think we need to give the chefs a round of applause because last night was absolutely amazing. Now, Chef Michael, why do you think biodiversity and food diversity is essential in feeding a growing world population?
Biodiversity is probably the most crucial in feeding the world population when it comes to cultural awareness, having enough ingredients to create with, having enough the diversity in the ingredients to attain to get micronutrients from. If you're only eating, we've had times in our history where people were just eating potatoes and milk and cream that really didn't turn out well.
Yeah.
And I think the more we have a more biodiverse culinary scene and food system, the more we're able to understand different people, different ways that these ingredients are being prepared, and how we can sustain those cultures in food and so on.
Yeah. Bringing it home, what would you say has been the hardest thing to take from trying to change the way we see things and advocating change through food, and perhaps produce or ingredients that you've had to use and you've gone to yourself, you know what, Chef Michael, this is going to be a difficult one?
Bringing people along, helping people realize that this is the way forward. It's not necessarily a challenge because nothing happens overnight, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're realizing that this is a journey, this is a goal, and constantly making sure that we are focused in trying to attain those goals is the way forward.
Yeah, I love the fact that you said it's a journey. We're starting these conversations to see the change, essentially. How do you think the 2020 for 2020 guide your professional work in your context, in your kitchens that you work around the world?
I think 2020, the goals, the SDG goals, really, really focused my agenda personally in how I approached food in Nigeria. Conscious. Once you're conscious about something, it really directs the way you approach it.
Yeah.
And it's really every single decision I want to make about a restaurant, about a dinner, about a conference is directed by those goals.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of in a practical way. I don't know how many foodies we have here, but in terms of some ingredients that you use, you're instead of using that, rather use this. Instead of, we were talking about it earlier, you go, oh, everyone just uses parsley and thyme. But anything practical that we could think of that is smarter and better for us?
I think things like that are very regional.
Yeah.
When you find you're constantly repeating a certain ingredient, you have things indigenously that you can look to. So looking at Nigeria, rather than always using salt and pepper, we have utazi, we have calabash nutmeg, we have otaiko. We have so many different options, and I think as chefs, it's important to also incentivize home cooks to go the next level, to try it. If it's just sprinkling otaiko on your morning egg to see how those flavors come together, try something new. Don't be so afraid cooking is not that hard. Don't listen to everyone who says.
And are these some of the things that you're going to be instilling in your new restaurant that you're working on?
Yeah, so the restaurant would also serve as a Chef Manifesto hub, where we can have conversations more than just chefs, home cooks, and people who really, really care about the future of foods. Those conversations are going to be happening in the restaurant, so we can actually have an impact.
I guess the most important thing is, how do we then start educating in small kitchens, and not just obviously these massive restaurants, but just like a home cook, people that are just working with maybe perhaps different clients that also advocate for change.
Well, I think we're in an age where social media and word of mouth has become so impactful. I think everyone in here, if every single person in here, speak on their platforms about what should be done for the next phase in food development and food growth, we would make an impact. The more we talk about it in all the platforms that we have to talk about, that we have available to us, the more impactful it would be.
Absolutely, I love that. Do you guys have any questions for Chef Michael by any chance? Anybody? Don't be shy. He doesn't bite. He just cuts really well. Questions? Oh, we've got one over there.
Mads Fischer-Møller from Denmark.
Yeah.
One question is, I work with politics and policy. Do you know, what would you wish for policymakers to do in order to support what you are doing in order to enhance the power of chefs in your work on transforming the food system? Because sometimes politics can amplify the voices alongside social media and so on.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Great.
I come from a country where it's very, very hard to get policymakers to even listen to anything that has to do with food and food growth. So from that perspective, I would want to have conversations with policymakers on how they can support this specific notions that we're trying to drive. You know, if it's about food waste, how can we work together to standardize how things are done, how produce are moved from one location to the other, how financially we can support the people doing this work.
Yeah.
Because all the budget is going into food is the core of any society. And if the food system is broken, the society is broken.
Sure.
So the policy system has to be really, really, really dynamic in supporting the chefs that are having this conversation.
I love that. Awesome. Okay, we've got I thought he deserved a round of applause for that as well. We've got a question from Chef Arthur.
Michael, just wondering, as we run headlong into 2050, what is the position of countries like Nigeria with huge populations in developing their food systems for the future? Because I know that they're coming out of a rather chaotic situation. What are the sort of key performance indicators that are required to live 260 million people into their food future?
Yeah, thank you. Everyone knows Arthur. Arthur is an amazing chef in London. That is a very, very loaded question. And I don't think any one person has the answer to the solution to lift 250 million people out of the dismay and food system, the chaos that we have in Nigeria. I think we all working together, especially in policy. A lot of the struggles that we go through in Nigeria is because of a lack of structure and infrastructure. The more we're able, and I think having an organization that makes every single country sign to a goal, but how do we keep them accountable for it? Because I can do what I'm doing in little spaces that hope to impact a larger population, but without the government, without financial support that drives the incentives faster, we can't accomplish those goals.
Fantastic. One more question from you, Tom.
I'd like to know, is there a particular ingredient that you like to champion as a sustainable product? And what is a recipe or dish that you can make with that?
One of my favorite, I'm a little biased about this, one of my favorite ingredients is black-eyed peas. I think it's very rich in protein, starch, micronutrients that are essential for us to actually have a very, very productive lifestyle. And some of the, we in Nigeria, we use it in a very, very diverse way. We use it for moi moi, which is a black-eyed pea steamed cake. We use it for gbegiri, which is a bisque, black-eyed pea bisque. It almost seemed like you added, cream to it when you have those bisques. Akara, which is a black-eyed bean fritter. I've used it in so many other creative ways, but it's such a unique ingredient that is also very resilient. You can store it dried and use it, and it stores very well in any climate.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I love how seeing Chef Michael speak about food, he literally lights up, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from this is that it's a journey. It's about educating people with small things and taking it back to different countries and implementing them. So please, thank you so much for having, for being here with us today. And please give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, fantastic. That was really, really informative. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Chef Michael. Are you guys still good? Are you learning something different? No? Gosh. Anyway, please put your hands together for the next person who's going to moderate this next session. Please put your hands together for Paul Newnham. Are we matching?
We are matching.
I love it. Mwah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, it almost feels like everything that I wanted to say, Michael's and Lorna have shared and pulled out. But it's just so great to be back at EAT for 1 year after, it's our 1 year birthday for the Chef's Manifesto. We launched last year this evening at EAT. And it's absolutely a delight to have chefs here from over 10 countries that have been cooking, engaging, and also being given the stage to share about what they're doing to drive food transformation and achieve the SDGs in their parts of the world, in their kitchens. And I think it is about action. And that is what the Chef's Manifesto is going to be focused on, using things like the Eat Lancet and other science and reports that we are going to talk about today as we cook to inform shifts in the way that we make choices, small choices, in how we put together food, how we drive trends, how we engage and remember culture and heritage, and how we work with farmers, suppliers to bring about a better planet or a future planet health, as well as a delicious and nutritious, affordable, accessible future for all. And so in the Chef's Manifesto, there's 8 thematic areas. If you haven't seen it, please look it up. Come and chat to the chefs. I said later on tonight, there's going to be a few of them hanging around, very open to have a conversation with you and hear more about what they're doing. But in this framework, one of the key areas that we're doing some work on and we're going to talk about, and it was highlighted earlier, is protection of biodiversity and improved animal welfare. And this is absolutely critical for us to achieve many parts of the SDGs. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ways in which we can do that. So why don't we get into the kitchen and let's have some food and get some smells going and have a conversation with our chefs. So I'm going to invite to the stage 2 chefs who are going to come and join us. So we've got Chef Chantal Nicholson and Chef Ali Mundra. How are you guys?
I'm
Good,
great.
very good.
You're good?
Very well.
You guys have been working
Awesome.
hard? So what are we going to do? Let's get you to do a quick intro.
think-
Where are you from?
I think first let's get this party started. So we're gonna say like, hey yo! Let's get this party started.
Okay.
Great. My name is Ali Mundra. I'm from Kenya. I'm a chef. I do a lot of TV, radio, and a lot of writing of recipes. So I have a test kitchen that I do produce recipes every single day because when you publish a recipe, it needs to be perfect. So I'm busy throughout the day because I'm publishing recipes and I'm trying to test the recipes at the end of the day. So that's what I do every single day back home, and it's amazing to be here with the Chef's Manifesto.
And how long have you been involved?
Oh, 1 year, definitely. Chef's Manifesto.
Yeah,
1 year. We launched it last year.
Yeah. You've been all over the world with it.
I've been all over the world. We've been to South Africa. We've been to Dubai. We've been to, can you remind me? New York City.
Stockholm?
New York City, Stockholm for the second time, and Kigali, and Kenya as well. We had an amazing event in Kenya in collaboration with the Global Citizen, which was awesome, and I can't wait to start cooking.
Well, get ready. We're going to get started shortly. Chantal,
Paul.
where are you from?
I'm originally from New Zealand, but I've been living in London for the last 15 years. I'm a chef, obviously. Been involved with the Chef's Manifesto from pre-day one, even.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a framework that allows us all to get together, put our heads together, chat, share ideas, and actually come up with some solutions to be able to really do some positive work with our food system and with the people within that food system as well.
And you weren't always a chef. How did you get into the kitchen?
Yeah, I used to be a lawyer, and then I decided that being a chef was much more interesting and fun. So for me, I've always loved food, and I loved the fact that it was a creative thing that I could do that I saw the results of twice a day. You know, when you're sitting in an office, sometimes you never see the result of what you do. So to be able to actually work with food, create, taste, smell, teach, develop, and see the results of that right in front of your eyes is awesome.
Yeah, that feedback loop, I think, is a real critical reason why chefs need to be in the room. Because what happens is what they do put on the plate, they get instant feedback straight away. They get feedback as they're putting it together, what the ingredients are like, how it works, but then straight away from customers, it's absolutely critical. So I'm going to let you guys get started. I'm going to invite two other guests. So the Chef's Manifesto is a network of chefs around the world. We have over 350 and growing. We're in 58 countries, but it's not just chefs. You know, you have to be a chef to be a part of it, but we have lots of friends. And why do we have friends? Well, we have friends for a lot of reasons. One of them is because as chefs realize that they don't do it all. They can't do this by themselves. They play a role, and it's when they work with others, they take information, knowledge, insight, ingredients, and they work together, then they can be informed, we can have discussions, we can change. And so we're going to invite two friends that have been involved in supporting us. And I'll invite Fabrice de Klerk and Dorothy Shaver and they're going to come up, and one is a scientist and one is a nutritionist, which are both absolutely critical for the conversation around good food. So why don't we start with you, Fabrice? You're obviously no stranger to eat. So tell us a little bit about what you do and why you're excited to be here.
Hi everyone, Fabrice de Klerk. I'm a biodiversity scientist, and I have been teasing Dorothy because I've been blue in the face for 30 years now trying to get people to recognize how important diversity is. And I should have found chefs 30 years ago because you guys make it fun. And Chef Michael a second ago just saying biodiversity is essential to public health, nutrition, and joy. Like, my God, I mean, it's just so natural for chefs to really recognize that this is the foundation of sustainability and health.
Yeah.
So I know Michael was asked, whether it was a fad or a long-term trend. And I think the good thing about diversity, Michael, is that there's 30,000 plant species, 30,000 fads ready to come along. So there's no limit to this fad, and let's make it a long-term fad.
Good point.
Yep, absolutely. And Dorothy, you're a dietitian.
Yes, I'm a dietitian and work closely with the Chef's Manifesto since the beginning of the Chef's Manifesto. I led the creation of the Future 50 Foods Report, which is a collaborative piece of work that you'll hear more about, I'm sure. And it was done with KNOR together with WWF, SDG2, Biodiversity International, and also with input from some chefs from the Chef's Manifesto.
Awesome.
So great to be here.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've done some work with chefs. Do you in terms of nutrition and the like, how do you feel taste fits in that kind of conversation?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, we can say all the foods that we want. We can talk about 50 foods, we can talk about thousands of foods, but if we don't know how to cook them and they don't taste good, nobody's going to eat them. So the most important thing that we can do is to work with chefs to make them taste good, to start the trends, because it starts with the chefs, because they bring the magic and the love to the plate, and then bring it out to our consumers. So that's why we work with chefs.
Cool. Okay, so chefs, how are we going? I want you to tell me a little bit about what we're going to be doing today, what you've got here, what ingredients you've selected, and let's have a look.
Sure. So obviously part of what we stand for is the 2020 for 2020, which is 20 chefs all signed up to this, I guess, framework, which is all about biodiversity. And I think here we're also incorporating some of the Future 50 foods, which Dorothy just mentioned, and Fabrice. So I've got a few of those in my dish today. So I've got some buckwheat, some chickpeas, some fava beans, some soy, some sesame, to be able to create something that's almost like a bit like a burrito / pancake with lots of deliciousness inside.
Wow. Okay.
That's it.
Perfect. Looks great. And Chef Ali, what have you got?
Great. I have some turtle beans. We call these njahe back home. They're typical black beans, but then our species are a bit different. They have the little white line. You can see that? A little white line. Yep. But then the turtle beans that I found here were basically just black. At the end of the day, they taste the same. And packed with powerhouse, right? There's actually powerhouse. Packed with fiber, and very rich in proteins at the end of the day. Right? Fantastic. Let's do this. Great. So what I did, first of all, what you need to do, you need to boil this. At least soak them overnight so that they can puff up a little bit, and then you want to boil them for like 2 to 3 hours until they're nice and soft, and then after that you can make whatever you want to make. I'm going to make a staple called njahe back home, and the staple is basically, I'm going to add a bit of some Swahili flavors. We're talking about some coconut, which is really healthy at the end of the day. Of course, garlic, ginger to spice it up, make it fun, and make it delicious. And as you know, beans, we love beans. We grew up with beans because at the end of the day, they're the future 50 foods. And at some point, we tend up to when we grew up, it's like we had a lot of it. So sometimes it gets a bit boring. And you'd be like, I don't like beans because I had them since I was little. But again, we tend to forget that these are amazing and they're very nutritious for you. So as chefs, what I do right now is basically just to make it sexy again, make it fun, add all those flavors, just make it delicious. And make it fun at the end of the day so everyone can be able to enjoy it. I made this yesterday. The feedback was amazing. We're just speaking about feedback here. The feedback was amazing, and that's what keeps us going, because when someone tastes your dish, they're like, oh my God, this is so good. That keeps me going. They want me to create more and more, and want me to bring back all these legendary ingredients and make them amazing again.
Great, thanks, chef. So keep working because I'm hungry.
Okay, great. You're gonna eat.
It's smelling good.
You're gonna eat.
So while the chefs are working, Fabrice, we heard this morning about the Eat Lancet. We heard that we're failing on achieving what we need to achieve. Except for the chefs. But tell us a little bit about why diversity is so critical to achieve the Eat Lancet.
Yeah, so I think diversity really, I'm usually ripe to say that there are no silver bullets, but I think diversity is the silver bullet if there is one, because it's so plastic.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, there was some critiques about the Lancet. Oh, you're telling us all what to eat. We're all going to eat the same thing. No, absolutely not. 30,000 species. Pick your culture, pick your region, pick your favorite. It allows us to explore cultures without traveling, so reduces carbon emissions while still traveling, but really allows us to, instead of breeding plants to environment, pick the right plant for the environment. Yeah. Pick the right plant that's something that someone wants to eat, will eat. And so it really increases that option space. This is not about limitation. It's about really expanding the opportunities. And I think that that's why diversity is the foundation to this.
Yeah, I was just had the opportunity to be in Peru. And obviously Peru has a lot of gastronomy, there's a lot of culture as well as a lot of biodiversity. And one of the things that I really hadn't quite appreciated, I suppose, was how different varieties could be the key to climate changing, different elements from that. From a science perspective, tell us about that a little bit more.
So it's a real story in history, right? We all know about Irish immigration moving to the United States. The reason, or one of the big drivers of that, was actually that when we went to Peru, which is where potatoes come from, we brought back one variety. And that one variety encountered one pest that just decimated the entire potato harvest all throughout Ireland, which was one of the big drivers of the immigrant impulse back by the US. If we had brought back more varieties, more species, the odds are that we wouldn't have lost that harvest and would have had a much more resilient, a much more stable home economy. So as we look to, I think, increasingly variable climates going to the future, Mozambique is a classic example, I think that increasing diversity, species that are resilient to different temperatures, resilient to different water pressures, are really going to be the key to making sure that we're able to have populations thrive on their home turf.
Cool. Yeah, no, absolutely so critical, especially when things are moving so fast. I think time is one of the big challenges.
So one of the really cool things that Jessica mentioned on stage is that the World Food Prize was given yesterday. This is the Nobel Prize of agriculture traditionally. So it's typically been really production-focused folks. Last year it was David Nabarro, who's here. If you have a chance to meet him, do say hi. He's a great guy. And Lawrence Haddad, which recognized that nutrition was key. Yeah. This year, it's gone to the East-West Seed Company, which was just about increasing diversity of vegetable seeds and making sure that we facilitate the exchange of seeds between regions because of that capacity to help us with climate, with environment, but also what's critically missing in our diets, those fruits and vegetables. So tremendous, I think, recognition from the ag side that diversity is foundation to both health and environment through that prize.
Wow. So future 50 foods have been mentioned. Tell us a little bit about what is a future 50 food and why is it important?
Sure. So we've been talking about how we don't eat enough variety. So what we did was we set out to say, what should we be eating? And these are 50 of the foods we should be eating. And the reason why is because they're nutritious. They have a lower environmental impact than many other foods. Many are drought resistant. Many can survive really challenging climates. They can grow in acidic soils. And also many of them are cover crops for nitrogen fixers, which are great for the soil. They're also accessible and available around the world. So it's from a global perspective that we took a look at the Future 50 foods. And also they can taste good, and especially taste good when they're cooked by the chefs from the Chef's Manifesto. So that's what it's meant to be. It's meant to be a consumer-facing piece of work that people can take and put these ingredients into their dishes at home, into their products if they make products, and also put into different types of recipes. So the intention is to inspire people to make 3 specific shifts. 1, to a higher variety and higher amount of vegetables. 2, to more plant-based sources of protein. And 3, grains, understanding that we rely on only 3 to 4 types of grains. So that's what Future 50 Foods sets out to do.
I think one of the things that Dorothy, you really picked up on is we have a lot of beans here, right? There's 3 species or 3 varieties, and we as people who eat foods recognize that beans are an important source of protein. Now, if we can nerd out for a second, the base element of protein is nitrogen. For a second.
Yeah.
All right, no long lectures?
No long lectures.
No. Well, so the base element of protein is nitrogen. And what's really cool about beans, the fab family, my name Fabrice means the bean grower, so I particularly like beans.
Really?
Yeah. Fabaceae, fabs,
Wow.
is that they have a nitrogen, they have a fertilizer factory in their roots. And so they create their own nitrogen. So increasing the consumption of beans allows us to get plant-based proteins, but it also reduces our dependency on nitrogen fertilizers, which, if you remember Johan this morning, is one of those environmental limits. So more beans is one way to both get the health benefits, but also an important way that our farmers are able to produce more productive food, but also within those limits. So I love fabs, I love beans.
Thanks.
That's why we have lots of beans in these dishes.
So there's a lot of beans here. So Ali, something like Future 50 Foods, thinking about beans, how is that helpful as a chef? Like how does this science kind of translate into how you think about these things?
In terms of the benefits that you get out of it at the end of the day, because this is rich in proteins, and we are trying to talk about less eating meat, even though I would say East Africa, or rather my country in Kenya, we love the meat at the end of the day. And it's really difficult to get, to step away out of it. But again, when the chefs, like myself, like what the Chef's Manifesto are doing, is like coming up with amazing recipes, make it look delicious and taste delicious as well, we are getting somewhere in terms of getting people to avoid a lot of meat and enjoy an ingredient like, of course, the njahe, which is basically the turtle bean that has an amazing benefit in terms of proteins for the human body.
Has anything changed since you've got involved in the Chef's Manifesto?
I always say that I see myself going vegan because I love it at the end of the day, and I feel like it is an amazing diet for the human being at the end of the day, because I grew up eating lots of meat. We're talking about beef, goat meat, chicken at the end of the day. And sometimes as you grow, you're looking at your health. And you feel like, okay,
you
now
grow.
Exactly, that's the thing. You grow everywhere. But again, with age, at the end of the day, you need to watch your diet. You need to know what you're eating at the end of the day. So I really enjoy plant-based ingredients, and thanks to the Chef's Manifesto, 1 year right now, it's actually our birthday, and then I feel like I'm slowly changing my eating habits, and for the better. So
that's great.
It's good.
As a plant-based chef, not only plant-based chef, but as a chef who really is driving plant-based food, how has this really helped you?
I think it's about, obviously the Future 50 foods and understanding why they are our Future 50 foods, why we need to be eating more of them. And I think, they're all out there, and actually all, apart from a couple of them, are really accessible. And I think they're also nutritious, but above all, they've got to be delicious. And I think that's where we come in as chefs, is to be able to say, right, this is what you need to do to make this delicious. For instance, I've got some tofu here, which a lot of people kind of think is really bland, not particularly interesting. So I've blended it with some ginger, some tahini, and some tamari. So it's kind of given it a bit of a rich texture. So it can be used almost as a dressing, as a sauce, as a base, which actually creates something that, you don't just have to kind of chop it up and stir fry it. So I think there's a lot of different things out there. Beetroot leaves are one of the Future 50 foods, and really, really They're 3 times more nutritious than the actual beet itself. A fact Dorothy told me this morning.
It's actually 2 times, it has 2 times more fiber and 2 times of many of the critical micronutrients that we need than regular lettuce. A lot of people are eating a lot of beets right now. They've become really popular in the Western world, but everybody's throwing away that beet green. It's actually far more nutritious than the beet itself. So make sure you eat the beet greens. They're kind of bitter.
And really colorful as well.
Yeah.
Which
bitter,
is also
but
helpful.
Yeah, but the bitterness is basically you just want to boil it with a bit of some salty water and then, actually blanch it, not boil it. Like 5 seconds, remove it, get rid of the water, then you kind of get rid of that bitterness.
And if there's enough flavour in there as well,
Yeah.
with raw like I've got here, you don't really notice the bitterness. It's kind of combated by the creaminess of the tofu and the beans themselves.
Yeah, we had an amazing conversation just 2 days ago around bitterness and how often you were saying something about bitter foods are more nutritious.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
So some of the most nutritious foods in the world are the most bitter foods because they have phytochemicals in them, and those are really bitter. Also, a lot of the most bitter foods can survive, and the reason for that is because animals and pests don't want to eat them. So they actually don't need a lot of pesticides or fertilizers to grow. So if we can unlock, together with the Chef's Manifesto, how we can make those foods less bitter and get people to eat them, it will be far better for our health and also the health of the planet.
Oh, Paul, can I nerd out again? So, I mean, you're a plant. You're a plant,
here we go.
right?
Oh, this is
You're
good.
a plant, and can you run away from a pest? No. You can't. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. And so the only defense that plants have against pests is to create these bitter flavors, right? And so these are unique phytochemicals that plants develop to protect themselves that we're now rediscovering in food. So now when we produce food and we take away that need to protect yourself, I think this is what we risk losing, is that nutrition. So I think when we think about how you produce sustainably, pest pressure is actually one way to keep that in there. And I think recognizing that evolution, I'll stop soon. Evolution to protect plants against themselves is where we get nutrition, right? I mean, it's the beans trying to create nitrogen, which isn't found in soil. So beans grow great in really high-risk environments because they're the only plants in the world that can create nitrogen. The great bitterness is plants trying to protect themselves against all these predators. And so ecology, evolution, what farmers do and what you guys are celebrating really is a celebration of just life on Earth and why it exists. And that diversity is, again, because of these interactions over billions of years that we're now re-putting back and celebrating on our plates.
So I think this really ties back to something that Gunhild raised, that the need we have now is for collaboration. We're having a conversation here about how a plant has protected itself, how that impacts the system, how that then delivers nutrients. We need to then talk about how do we put that into our food. We've had Chef Manjit Gill, who is with us from India, was talking a lot about the different flavor profiles. And we've been talking then in different parts of the world, we're talking about Nigerian bitter leaf and different elements and saying, okay, so what could we pair and how do you make that accessible? Do you have any experience with bringing in bitter foods into some of the work that you've done, Chantal?
I mean, I think what's interesting is also it's potentially, and this was raised this morning in one of the sessions, about actually changing our palate. Not necessarily changing the food, but changing our palate. And I think a lot of our palates have become accustomed to highly processed, salty, fatty, sweet food. And actually to then go into something different is quite different. And Alva, who's one of our chefs with us from East Timor, she talked about training her team, and it took them about 5 months, she said, for them to be able to actually adjust their palates to be able to enjoy food that was nutritious and delicious and not kind of fast food that wasn't particularly great for them. So from that perspective, I think it is a change in palate. And we have seen, a trend in the last probably 5 or 6 years with more bitter foods coming into our diet, probably more on the beverage side, I would have to say. So the prevalence of Aperol spritzers, gin and tonic having a resurgence, they're all about bitter flavours. Tonic is made from quinine, which is a bitter flavour. So it's interesting how those kind of things happen. So I think for us, yes, we can do things to actually change the food, but also I think we need to look at ourselves and how we can kind of adjust our palates and train our palates to be able to enjoy food that is biodiverse, really good for us, and also really tasty.
Yeah. Ali.
Yep.
What are some of the things that you've kind of picked up that you think people can take home? Like, what's some tips that you would you do a lot of TV, you do a lot of education, recipe development. What's some tips that you would give people about trying to improve their diet, add more Future 50 foods, more biodiversity? Like, what are some of the small things that people can start with?
I would say a focus on plant-based ingredients at the end of the day, because it's really good and it's really healthy and it's really important for the diet. And I do this every single day when I do the recipes. You know, I do more of veggie and more of legumes and more of root vegetables, which are readily available. So what I normally do, I always talk to people about what's locally available for where you come from at the end of the day, because this is how you'll be able to also support the farmer. I work very closely with the farmers, thanks to IFAD, and we go and learn the climate change, how it affects them at the end of the day, and we look for ways how to be able to support them. So focusing on plant-based ingredients that are local to where you come from is basically something really good, and will be amazing and will benefit everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think we're getting close to having some food to try.
Indeed.
Getting close.
Yeah. I think we're ready.
So as we do that, Chantal, tell us a little bit about this 2020 by 2020. What's that all about?
So that is about it's an initiative set up by Food Forever, and about how can we really champion biodiverse ingredients and actually get more chefs to cook with them. So the intention is that 2,020 chefs sign up by 2020 next year. So I think even that's also collaborating with us as a Chef's Manifesto. It's a great way to get the message out. It's also an educational tool, and I think it also allows people to have a greater understanding. It allows education, and I think even just sharing of ideas really helps it. And I think biodiversity is, as we've heard today, and previous to this, is super important. And I think, again, as Ali said, try to eat local, seasonal. The grains the fava beans today are all grown in Britain. Fava beans, buckwheat flour that I've used in my pancakes. So again, it's about sometimes searching those things out as well, not just kind of picking the easiest option, and putting some thought into it as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the impact can be there. Like one of the chefs in our network, Connor Spacey, he's from Ireland, and he challenged his chefs. He has, I think, 20 odd sites. He's growing really quickly. I can never quite know the exact number, but he challenged them to create a plate and to put more diverse ingredients from locally around. And he told me that week they served 2,000 plates of food. Now, he's going to put that on the menu. And that's 1 week. So then you start to roll that out and we start to see some change. People start to eat things. They start to ask about them. They start to order them. And so we start to move forward. In terms of getting more chefs on board, I know, Dorothy, you've got access to a few chefs in your network.
Just a few.
Yeah.
400.
When are you going to work that announcement out?
We have 400 chefs.
Yes.
Across 50 countries.
Nice.
Okay, so
they're all going to sign up.
They
next
are?
week.
Next week?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll hold you to it.
You've got that on. You've got that on record.
Got it on camera.
Yeah.
Okay. So
but other people have to too. Who else is going to sign up? Who else is going to sign up?
Yes. So we need to really step this up. Time is running out.
Yep.
And we need to get more action. And so we are looking for people to join in, and we want that to be delicious. We want that to be healthy. We want that to be good for farmers. And so we need people to come in. If you're from a company, you have a chef network, if you have a restaurant, talk to them about it. It's really simple. It's actually really creative. You just add more diverse ingredients and tell people about it. It couldn't be better. So we've got some food.
Can I challenge the challenge?
Great.
You can challenge the challenge.
Dorothy knows what's coming. So 2020 chefs by 2020, but with 2020 ingredients. And so I want every new chef signing on to give us one ingredient that's not already on the list. Right?
Yeah.
And Dorothy will then write a book about them.
I will not.
No pressure.
I think you can do
This
it.
is
Right?
it.
All of you just need to bring one more, and if 2,020 of you do it, that gives us 2,020 ingredients. And I think that this is a contribution from each individual that will make the network.
Awesome.
Well, this is amazing.
What do we think, chefs?
Fab.
Maybe in Timor, if we get at least 1,000 chefs in Timor, we'll get to the ingredients pretty quick.
Yeah.
You'll do it pretty fast.
Exactly. We're going to get
And
Peru too. They
Every
have
type
Peru
of
foods.
potato.
Yeah,
With
exactly.
palmero.
See, this is where it becomes fun, and I think the challenge around biodiversity, to me, it really unlocks so many parts of SDG 2 and also so many other areas, because you can, improve nutrition just by eating different things. You can also help farmers. You can mitigate climate. There's all these elements. And so I think it's a great place to start to really help us to move forward. And so I'm super excited about it. How was, I think some of the food's going out. You've passed some food around.
Ali's passed some of his
Dorothy,
delicious
can you give us any thoughts on this
it's
dish?
fabulous. It's like a beanie and coconutty and sesame, and it's great.
Okay, are you going to try something for Fabrice?
Do I get to try it too?
Really? You want to try the...
You need to try, yeah.
Maybe you should try this one.
You'll never miss the meat.
Yeah.
You'll never miss the meat
Oh,
with
you'll
this.
never miss the meat. Yep,
Never
I know
miss
that.
the meat.
Is it
I
good,
can
guys?
feel that.
And the planet will thank you.
Do you want us to cook next year for the evening dinner at Eat?
Woo!
Yeah. Let's get that trending on the app.
And I think we should get Paul to do a course.
Wait, Klaus is doing it tonight, and he's going to do an amazing job. We don't want to miss that. Klaus is a great chef. But yeah, let's get that going. Just seed that little idea. So, in terms of finding out more information, where do we go to find out more information? So we've got a number of things that have been mentioned. So Fabrice, finding out information, best. Okay.
We're not talking.
Best sources to go and find out information about ingredients.
I've got 4 ingredients.
Yeah. So where do you find out about these plants? No, there's the plants. Like, how do people source information about the actual?
Oh, I mean, Biodiversity would be happy to help with
Yeah,
that.
Biodiversity
There's
International.
fantastic ethnobotanies. There's all sorts of nerds like me, even nerdier than I am, who have this information, who are looking for some place to publish it. Yeah, I'll tell you, Biodiversity will curate your list for you.
Okay.
If you guys give us one
Here
each,
we go.
we'll curate the list for you.
Awesome. Where's your go-to for finding out information about a new ingredient?
It is the internet.
Really?
Yeah. Instagram, but also even the Manifesto, the Chef's Network. I've learned about, countless new ingredients in the last 3 days that we've been in Stockholm. So I think sharing of information with each other is crucial.
Yeah. No, I think the conversation across countries is absolutely critical. And it's really important, because I think it's when you're in one place, sometimes everyone's using the same thing.
You get a goldfish bowl, don't you?
Yeah. So I think that's something that we've really found in the past year, where chefs have met each other and they start to talk about these ingredients. And so, Ali, where do you find information on new ingredients?
I go to the market every single day at the end of the day, so I want to know what's new in the market. So I love to go around the market, and the fact that people notice me when I go around, which is really good. And you see that, right? Every single day I'll go to the market because I want to learn what is new. I want to learn what is scarce. I want to learn what are we getting every single day at the end of the day, because this is basically the local produce, and this is what I eat every single day. I'm not really fancy. I'm not that caviar kind of chef. I use the local ingredients, because when I go to the market, sometimes I buy from the mamambogas. The mamambogas are basically the women that sit down and sell their vegetables on the road or on the street. So I'm that kind of a chef, because I want to use the local ingredients that's readily available, and that's definitely how I know there's a new trend, or there's basically a new vegetable that came up in my local market.
Yeah.
I mean, markets are losing that diversity. I was in Colombia; it was fantastic, but even in some places like France, I'm not finding it. So how do we get more of that back on those grocery store shelves?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah, well, I think, Fabrice, one of the things is having chefs. I mean, Ali goes in there and streams live almost every minute.
Just imagine the line behind.
And there's a whole group of
every
people.
minute.
But I think if chefs starting asking for things, and they start looking for things, the market responds. It doesn't always, but the market does respond, and they'll go and find something for you. And the more people are out there asking, the more people who are aware will probably start to then, and that's where we have to work with business, we have to work with food system, we work with farmers. Everyone can contribute to actually say, well, let's provide solutions that are convenient and accessible and affordable for all.
And I think that even the byproducts that get created when there's a new demand for something is really interesting. And I think that's, these guys, Homidods from the UK, they obviously have a huge amount of fava beans, and they've had some left, so they've fermented them and made the most amazing umami paste. So again, I think it challenges them to think differently about what they do with an excess or a byproduct, rather than it just, kind of being used for animal feed.
Is this expensive food?
No.
I mean, I keep getting
Not at all.
told that
Actually-
healthy food's too expensive.
Actually, this bean is actually considered for the poor back home. But again, to me, I say it is the most expensive and rich because it is very nutritious. And if someone's not having this, is actually really missing out in terms of taste, flavor, because you have a little meaty flavor, you have a little bit of some smoky flavor in there. It's just fantastic. So people avoid it because, as I said, we grew up eating it. But again, it's all about just creating more fun and flavor and make it delicious.
Great.
That's it.
So I know, chefs, we're going to have to start cleaning up. But Dorothy, final word on why you think it's critical for chefs to be involved in this process.
Sure. So the process of Future 50 Foods was a collaborative piece. So we worked together with Biodiversity International, which was mentioned, also Crop Trust, Food Forever, and a lot of other partners. So it's really critical for us to all work together throughout the whole entire chain in order to get these foods on people's plates. And again, as I said, chefs bring the magic and chefs bring the love to the food. And we need that in order for people to eat these foods. So we need to work together to make these foods taste good, to make sure that they're on the shelves, to change their reputation from being foods that people ate when they were little or when they didn't have any money, and bring them up and bring them back into the world so that we can live in a better place and we can be healthier.
Thanks, Dorothy. So thank you, Dorothy and Fabrice. Can we get a round of applause for Dorothy and Fabrice? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. So, Ali.
Yep.
Chef.
Yep.
Is it okay if we pass these beans out?
Please do, yeah.
What I would love is if everyone can take a bean.
Yep.
And I want them to hold on to it for the rest of the forum. And as they put that in their pocket or somewhere, if you think you're going to lose it, Justin, get two. But everyone else, just take one bean. And I want you to take that as a bit of a symbol of the importance of biodiversity. And I want you to, every time you find that bean, I want you to be reminded about how urgent this is. In the Sustainable Development Goal 2.5, they say that we need to protect our biodiversity by next year, by 2020. Most of the SDGs are by 2030, 10 years from next year. This is about by next year. Being involved in the SDG 2 Advocacy Hub, that's pretty frightening because we're not on track. So we need every single person to do their bit. And chefs can help us lead the way. Chefs can help make it delicious and construct and put that together. But we need each of you to do the bit that you can as well. So think about biodiversity, think about how you can bring that in, and let's make a delicious change. So let's put our hands together and thank Chantal and Ali for coming and bringing some food. Thank you for sharing your insights and thank you for being with us. And we have a range of other chefs. There's about 23, maybe even more. There's probably about 30 chefs that I'm aware of so far. If there's more chefs, you want to be a part of what we're doing, come and join us. We would love to have you. And please make sure you go find a chef and have a chat with them and see how they're getting involved in this. Thank you.
Wasn't that just absolutely amazing? I think whenever you have chefs in one room, it's fun, it's interactive, and the best part is that you always get to eat, right? No? Thank goodness. So now I must tell you, we were chatting about Chef Ali and how he goes to the market every day, and I thought, we can't bring him all the way to Stockholm and you can't see what he does when he gets to the market. He has like this whole like singing thing that he does. And I'm just going to give him the stage and we're going to pretend like we're at the market in Kenya and they're selling different kinds of produce. And Ali's on Instagram all the time. If you follow him, Chef Ali on Instagram, he is lots of fun. I'm going to let him just take the stage and show you what he does. Take it away, Ali.
So suppose like I'm in the market right now and my wife has sent me some fish. So there's a Swahili song that I'm going to sing right now. I'm with my phone, so I'm gonna go like, because at the end of the day, it's entertainment and it's still for the love of my followers. So we just go like live, and I'm gonna stream live right now. We're just gonna go like, I'm going to the market, and Lorna has amazing ingredients there.
Amazing ingredients.
Yeah, you have some fish, and I'm gonna sing a song for my wife who I'm buying fish for her.
Right.
So it goes like, "Hey, hamimi mwenyewe konda, hamimi konda sokoni, kununua samaki kole kole, pelekea bibi jumbani." Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
See what I mean? He is very entertaining. So if you're up early in the morning,
thanks a lot,
and you want to see what Ali's doing, follow him on Instagram. It's definitely entertaining. I think we've had an amazing time so far. I've learned so much. Like Ali, some of the Future 50 foods were really difficult for me to eat or enjoy. But I think being in the kitchen is about having fun and having a go and just trying it out, and seeing what happens. And I think that's the joy about food, and that's the joy about eating well. And hopefully, as we learn and as we engage, we're making a difference in our world and on the planet. Next up, we've got Sudhvir Singh, who's the director of policy at EAT, and he's going to be sharing a few things with us. So please give him a hot, huge foodie round of applause. Awesome. Cool.
That was a tough act to follow. My last name's Singh, but I'm not going to sing that, unlike him. But this morning we heard once again about the science and the urgency that we need to really catalyze this global food systems transformation. And we really need to act. And that's why the topic of our next panel about cities is so inspiring, because cities are taking action. I'm really fortunate to lead a policy network, and we work with a lot of governments, and there are some really leading, bright governments, but in general, policy processes take time, and you can spend a lot of time going through dialogue and not seeing a lot of results. But what we found with the cities' work is that cities are experimenting, they're taking action, they're learning from each other. And that's because they have to, right? Cities are on the front line of a lot of the challenges that we're hearing about, whether it's climate change and extreme weather events, whether it's inequality, whether it's diet-related disease. But because cities are such a hub of people and ideas, we can see some incredible results. And cities are also a hub and concentration of consumption. And it's through shaping this consumption that we can influence the food system as a whole. So today's panel is really about discussing how do we shape urban environments and consumption to improve and make more resilient food systems as a whole. And EAT's really investing in this agenda. We're proud to partner with a number of cities and helping translate the EAT Lancet to their context. We also have a partnership with C40, and through that we now have 50 cities around the world taking action on food. And 30 of those cities are here. Are there any cities in the audience? Can you give us a wave? Yeah, good to see you. That's great. And we've been at City Hall yesterday talking about the kind of next steps that we're going to take. We'll be back there on Friday. And there's a number of exciting things in the works, which we'll hear more about now. So on that, I'd like to introduce you to one of our very special city representatives, Sibusiso Chamane from Durban. eThekwini, please join us. Sibusiso is the head of agroecology in a city of 4 million people, Durban. So we look forward to hearing more about that. But please, if Jeff Rysam can join. Jeff is the partner and chief innovation officer at Gale Architects. And we have Clementine Skuteden, the director of food at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation as well. Come on up. So, Sibusiso, you're from Durban, my hometown actually. It's where my family's from, so it's really great to see you up here. And yeah, really interesting. Why is Durban taking action on food, and why is there a department of agroecology in a city? Can you tell us a bit more about that and the kind of actions that you're taking?
Okay. Thanks, Sudhvir, and good afternoon, everyone. eThekwini, which is Durban, the brand name is Durban. eThekwini municipality is faced with a number of challenges. It's not unique to the rest of South Africa. There are environmental challenges, especially in the area around South Durban Basin, which is next to the sea on the coast. Because of industrialization, there's air pollution, as well as the waste disposal into the rivers and stream. The area has been declared environmentally degraded. With regards to, we all know that when the apartheid system came to an end, there were a number of laws that were repealed, especially the influx control, and a number of people migrated and started to flood the cities. As a result, over 300 informal settlements have cropped up, and that in itself is a challenge, especially on the environment, because they've built their houses or shacks in the environmentally sensitive areas, the demos areas, and along the river banks. We also have serious challenges when it comes to food security. Not that there is no food in the country. When you go to shops, you find, for example, in the shop there's over 10 types of jam or margarine. There's plenty of food, but people don't have access to the food because they don't have money. There's a high unemployment rate in the country, and in Durban alone, we are sitting at about 39% of people who are unemployed, the homeless, the street kids, and the vulnerable groups. Faced with those challenges, the city has come with a number of resilient strategies and interventions, of which agroecology is one. I'm not going to touch on many others. I'm just focusing on one for the purposes of this discussion and interest of time. Agroecology, agribusiness, as well as public employment program. Agroecology focuses on food security to assist the subsistence farmers to ensure that people at the end of the day, with this high unemployment rate, they've got food on the table to eat. We've established 7 agricultural hubs, which are strategically located in the area of Durban to be able to link up with the farmers and support them with the agricultural inputs, seedlings, fencing, irrigation systems, as well as when they need tractors and technical support, continual support. There's also agribusiness which caters for those people who are in the semi-commercial and commercial farming to open the doors, the market doors for them to be able to sell their produce as well as to tap in the agricultural value chain. We've opened a number of doors for those. With regards to public employment program, of which I'm also championing, we have on average 30,000 participants a year in that program. We employ people in that program on 3 sectors, which is infrastructure, environment, and culture, as well as the social sector. We train them whilst they are on the job, so that when they leave the program, they are able to go out and compete in the labor market. To touch on the few of the environmental programs, it's like the programs like your stream cleaning, the food for waste program, the removal of invasive alien species. So eThekwini has set up both agri-business as well as agroecology to deal with those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, you've laid out a number of ingredients here on the kitchen for us to work with. Jeff, I'd like to turn to you. You're a world-leading urban designer. What on earth is urban designers doing on the food agenda?
Yeah, I actually have to explain that lots of times, why an architect, urban designer is thinking about these things. But for us, so our work is about putting people first in cities and in our communities. And so if we can design for certain behaviors, right? So if we talk about urban resilience, which is part of this discussion today, there's a whole lot of sort of top-down approaches about investing in infrastructure or big sort of hidden technologies that are important. But we also like to talk about, well, what can individuals do every single day? And how can we empower them or design for them to make choices in their environment that are better for them and better for the collective? And this is pretty tricky to try to understand. So I could tell you 2 stories about that. One, it has to do with kids in South London, where one of our partners, Guys in St. Thomas Charity, have done research to understand why so many young children, especially of Caribbean descent and other immigrants to the city, are hanging out in chicken shops, essentially, places that don't have that healthy of food. And there was an assumption that maybe these kids were hanging out there because of the food on offer. But what the study was able to show was that they actually felt like they belonged there. They felt like they could spend time there. They felt that it was a place for them. And so we're thinking about, well, can we design other places in the city, public spaces, other parts that have more maybe healthy environments where kids like that can still feel welcome, still feel included, and still feel like they can belong somewhere. So that's one part. Other part, even more personal, I have a stepfather who is, I'm from America, as you can tell. He's also from America. He's quite large. He's obese, and he has type 2 diabetes. And he comes to Copenhagen 3-4 times a year, and literally 24 hours after he comes to Copenhagen, he can half his amount of medication to keep his blood sugar stable. It's like a miracle, right? But of course he eats still basically the same way that he usually does, but there's something about the Copenhagen environment. Actually, he walks a little bit more. He takes a little bit longer with his meals and socializes a bit more around them. He doesn't have to think that it's about him and his behavior, actually. He can just be part of that environment and automatically begin to be a little bit healthier. So I think it's incredibly interesting to think about these 2 very different examples, and they're difficult to talk about, actually, from the social perspective. But how can we be honest about those situations, and how can we design environments so more people don't have to make an active choice? It doesn't have to be about them, but it can actually be about the system that we design that really invites and incentivizes some better food habits, healthier behavior that's good for individuals and also good for the wider collective.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jeff. A lot more to explore there as well. But now over to you, Clementine.
Yeah.
It's great to see Ellen MacArthur doing so much on circular economy. You've done a lot on fashion, on plastics, but now you're moving to food and food in cities. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like Jeff's stories about how your system influences your food choice. And I'd like to start with my own story. When I took on the role at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, I used to live in a European capital. And I transitioned to living on this quiet, very rural British island. And the way I shop for food and my connection with food could not be more different between these 2 situations. In a city, I used to shop in this small, cramped supermarket. And while there was nothing wrong about it, I didn't particularly feel good about the food that I was getting. Is the mic issue? Not working? All right. Let's get that fixed.
We're doing a swap.
So as I was saying, when I was a citizen, I didn't have... No, still not.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know if I can give you mine. Can you loan this?
No, one's coming on. That's all right.
It's coming? Okay.
Maybe we'll come back to that. I'm really sorry about the disruption
No.
there. But Jeff, coming back to you for a second, you've told some really incredible stories, but we've heard about quite a challenging context before: high unemployment, food insecurity, informal settlements. How does some of your methodology and discipline in urban design, how can we bring that into these kind of contexts?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know, is my mic working?
Oh, this is fun.
Going on.
This is...
Okay, well, I think mine kind of comes in and out.
Can you hear Jeff?
Okay. Okay, good, sorry. So, there's no sort of universal solution? No, you can't.
Okay.
We'll drink some water.
Okay.
Sing cheers if you have some.
Okay. Well, I think your mic works. So we've deliberately set this up to hear from Durban.
There you go.
the
Yeah.
most. Do you have any initial reflections hearing about urban design, circular economy, and how they could apply to Durban?
Yes. I so wish our urban designers were here, but going back to Durban, through the forums like our C40 forum, we're going to share with them the lessons learned here. Because most of the time they are reacting to densities in the city. They haven't actually assisted in terms of looking at agriculture per se, except for 1 or 2 projects, which is like the rooftop gardens and so forth. But on our own, as the agroecology, with regards to a circular economy, we had a number of initiatives with the assistance of funding from the European Union and with partnerships with institutions of higher learning and NGO sector. We've piloted some programs like the wastewater treatment, where we are throwing in the sludge and convert it into biosolids and applied into gardens as organic composting. We've also piloted in terms of the biodigesters, because we are into the school's nutrition program. We feeding the school children because most of the parents are on subsistence wage. Through the biodigesters, we've linked them up with the ablution facilities and also putting in the food waste there to generate the biogas. The other initiatives like the utilization of the grey water in the gardens, because there's been an issue of a drought in Durban. You know, when you talk about climate change, people were thinking it's a myth until there was a drought about 3 years ago, and then we were hit by a storm. You know, now we are on a fertile ground when we are talking about the climate change to people, because they now understand, they've got a first-hand experience in terms of how the climate can do a damage to them.
Right, okay. Clem, can we try your mic again? No, if someone could help with that, that would be fantastic. But Jeff, how about you? Have they got you
now
sorted
does
out?
It work? Yes. Yeah, all right. We'll keep, don't move. I'll stay very stiff. All right, so looks very natural. You were talking about how to apply this. I'm going to stay like this. How you will apply it, because if I, how we can apply it to Durban.
Yeah.
Right? So no one-size-fits-all solution. It's kind of hard for you guys to think about this seriously, but it's going to be a serious response to my stiff facade here. So you can't say that design can impact, you can't say this is this one design solution and we're going to do it in every city everywhere, obviously. But in places like Durban or emerging economies that are rapidly urbanizing, it's really interesting to think about design at this sort of macro level. So can we begin to, you mentioned to me earlier, 100,000 people a year almost are migrating to Durban. So can we begin to design at a macro level about land use planning, about how to integrate agriculture more into city areas, so simultaneously provide access to transportation, to different types of employment opportunity, to social connection, and integrate that in a more dense urban way that can accommodate all this new population while simultaneously recognizing the skills that exist, say, around agricultural business, the skills that you're helping to train. So to say that there's in this case, there's a macro urban design issue about land use planning, transportation access, things like that for population growth, whereas maybe in places like Copenhagen or Stockholm, it's very much more about how do we ensure, again, maybe equal access for different income groups, different access about affordable housing, things like that, different diversity of food access in an already highly urbanized area, which becomes a more micro type of intervention solution. So lots of different ways to look at
different
it.
scales. Yeah, it's really important. Clem, I'm really hoping we have you back.
Yeah.
We have you back.
Looks like it.
Okay.
Sorry for keep you waiting,
So
everyone.
you just started a fantastic story. Could we go back there?
Yeah, let's try again.
Yeah.
So the story was I transitioned from being a citizen to living in a rural area. And in a nutshell, my connection with food was just revived from the way that I now have access to food and understanding where my food comes from. I can now directly access food from farms. Well, previously I only just had access to food from a small supermarket without no particular, value to it. And to me, it was the most powerful incentive to believe in a new model and to believe that, we really have to act now, as Gunhild was saying this morning, and having this constant reminder every day in my face of what are the natural resources that are engaged in farming, the biodiversity that is thriving, meant to be thriving around our farms. And what I realized as well is that for most of us citizens, that experience is just not available. There's no way you can have, access to your food system, understand where your food comes from, what it took to grow it. And really, this is about providing cities a place where they're not only contributor to a set of negative issues like climate change or biodiversity loss, pollution, but actually turning them into a positive contributor. And this has been our work, to lay out a circular vision for food in cities. And that comes across 3 ambitions, and you've touched upon it already. The first one is growing food in a way that is not degrading natural resources, but regenerating them. So if we can make sure that the food we eat in cities is sourced that way, that'd be amazing. And there's a huge potential for growing and sourcing locally grown food, which again ties into that connection between citizen and their food system. The second one is about making the most of food. So that's obviously no food waste, but also valorizing the waste that we have to deal with anyway, organic waste, human waste, grey water. And then finally, we touch upon the role of the system. And that is hugely important. As consumers, when you walk into a supermarket, when you walk into a restaurant, a set of options have been laid for you. And you should only be facing options that are good for you and your health. There should not be a choice where, you have to compromise either the gastronomical pleasure of eating food or your environmental aspect or your health. We should be able to provide citizens, and everyone in the world the right options for planetary and human health.
Indeed. So, Glenn, you raised consumers as a key lever here. But in policy right now, we are seeing challenges in that sometimes policymakers are at one level, they're not even speaking the same language as ordinary people. And so in this work on food and cities, how can we actually bring people with us and citizens with us? Do you have any examples or methods from the circular economy approach that we can learn from?
Yeah, and I mentioned already reconnecting people with their food system, and I think that is a key element of that. Yeah. Once people understand what's behind their plate, there's suddenly a willingness to do the right thing that was maybe not there before. And again, building on Jeff's story, we have to think what's happening before consumption, what's happening after consumption in terms of waste management, for example, and food production. And how do we make sure that we crack those steps in the right way, so that consumer really can only do the right choices. We have to put people in the right setup so that it doesn't have to be on them to do the right thing. It doesn't have to be so hard for them.
Right, and that seems to resonate a lot with the urban design approach that you mentioned, Jeff. Could you expand a bit on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now my mic doesn't work there. Okay. So another angle, if we revisit this London setting, right? So I think putting people in the equation, we first really need to understand a little bit more about human behavior. So get some more knowledge. There's actually not a lot of knowledge out there about how the built environment impacts things like obesogenic behavior, or not even necessarily tied directly to health, but like I also mentioned about other behaviors or sense of belonging. So for us, there's an ethnographic actually part of this that's related to really looking at citizens in their natural habitat, like we would, studying other animals, studying the human animal in their community, and as part of their everyday life, right? I think it's very tricky to ask people particular questions. We also, know there's a lot of value to sort of like questionnaires about, say, nutrition and things. But if we can add a layer of observation to that, to observing people in their natural environment, then we can naturally begin to design for them or include policies for them or workforce development policies, whatever it might be, if we understand the challenges they face every single day, and that takes some effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd just like to pick up on, you mentioned some knowledge gaps on the behavior side. Subasiso, sitting in a city government,
yes.
Are there some knowledge or evidence gaps that you'd like support with or help answering?
Yes. Durban has a combination of both rural as well as the urban component. 67% of the city's spatial footprint is rural. That is, it's under the jurisdiction of the traditional leaders. And the people in the rural areas, their way of living is through agriculture. And it's the only means of getting into the mainstream economy. What we've done as agroecology as well as the agribusiness as well is to assist them, to empower them through agriculture so that they don't migrate to the cities for better opportunities. So we are assisting them in terms of what they know best, which is the agriculture, by introducing the best farming practices like your permaculture and other conventional farming methods, as well as we've introduced fish farming. There's already a budget for it within the city. So through the IDP processes, which is an integrated development plan, we listen to what the people need and then we respond to their challenges.
Fantastic. And do you have any examples of how you actually evaluate or measure the impact of some of these agroecological interventions?
Yes, we've got a number of trainings that are taking place. And we utilize the students from the academic institutions to come in and assist the farmers. They also do the evaluation in terms of, is there an impact in terms of people have they moved from their old ways of farming into permaculture? Is it yielding any profits? Because most of the time when people they farm, they eat, they consume themselves, and then they sell a surplus. Immediately when we see that a substantial number has moved from subsistence farming into semi-commercial and commercial farming, that in itself tells you that we are making an impact in terms of growing our people.
Right, okay. So time's rapidly running past. So I'd like to also hear about some of the actions and next steps that we can look forward to in the coming months from our great partners here. So starting with you, Clem, is there something that we can look forward to in the coming months?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm delighted to announce that we're launching today the next phase of our work on circular economy and food in cities. We're partnering with 3 major cities, New York, London, Sao Paulo, to develop circular economy solutions to address climate change, biodiversity, human health issues. And the goal is really to create with those flagship cities inspiring stories that will inspire more cities to join us on the path to a circular journey for food. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about the role of the private sector and how this has to be a cross-value chain and multi-stakeholder collaboration story. And we believe that too. And that's why we're working with leaders of the industry such as Nestlé, Danone, Yara, Veolia, Miscan, and Novamont to work with the cities and those leaders and to create valuable outcome at scale. Our targets for the coming 3 years are to touch the food experience of 100 million citizens in the world and work with the private sector representing 5% of the food market.
Wow.
This is only the beginning of the journey for us. We want to raise the bar, we want to raise the ambition until we have truly achieved what we think is a system-level change for a circular economy for food.
Wow, something to look forward to. And I'm guessing people can find out more by visiting your exhibition at the back.
Yeah, absolutely. We have an exhibition space right at the end of this corridor. You're more than welcome to come meet us and talk to us about this amazing project.
Great, thank you. Okay. Jeff, from your end, the urban design piece, do we have some actions in mind that people can look forward to?
Yeah, I think so. You may have heard the public health director of Copenhagen earlier today talk about this great project together with EAT, C40, many different university partners, actually taking the Eat Lancet report and then trying to actually implement it in people's everyday behavior. So how do we get people to actually purchase food in this way, learn how to make it, and then actually enjoy it together? So we're working with public kitchens, school yards, to combine this idea of the public meal, and also tie it to this social, the social connection that we've been talking about, right? Because we know that eating is more than just the nutrition in and of itself. So this translation of this fantastically ambitious, Eat Lancet diet into real everyday life, and in two very different neighborhoods. So we're looking in Copenhagen at an area with a higher income and another one with a lower income, and then seeing and trying to learn from what works and what doesn't, making some design interventions in these places to see if we can invite for some behavior change, learn from that, and then hopefully scale that up to many different cities. So it's actually, as I hear you talk, Clem, there's a lot of synergistic elements from being able to learn, right, in your case, 3 mega cities. How do you take those lessons and apply them elsewhere? The same here in this Copenhagen case. And that's the real, I think, one real challenge that we have to continue on is how do we keep the uniqueness and specificity of culture around food and around design, but then also deconstruct some principles from it that we can utilize in many different contexts.
Really interesting. Yeah, thank you. Could you just paint the picture a bit more about what some of these design interventions could actually look like?
Yeah, sorry, sir. To be even more concrete. So, so the foodscape, that's sort of the building edge. So the transparency of a shop, or the prevalence of fresh food out in the street, or signage that might indicate something to a particular patron, or the accessibility. I mentioned a schoolyard before of a public kitchen, right? The accessibility of that kitchen to people know that there's a public kitchen in there. So there's potential design interventions at many different scales, right? Can we redesign that frontage? Can we make it easier to have fresh food on the street? Can we improve accessibility to parts of the city that do have more diverse food options? So we're going to base these design interventions on what we see out there are the challenges and barriers, but they could be very, very small about signage or information, or even actually much larger about improving transit access or something like that.
Great, okay. And Sibusiso, you're a close partner of both EAT and C40.
Yes.
Can you give us a picture of some of the next steps in terms of your actions on food in Durban?
Okay. The school nutrition program that I've mentioned is the competency of the provincial sphere of government. We're just coming in terms of ensuring that there is a supply of fresh produce, dairy products, as well as meat to the schools. Because we are the major supplier through our farmers, we are going to be able to set an agenda in the form of a menu, what's put in there for the kids to consume, learning from the C40 as well as the EAT Forum. Having said that, we've got our own soup kitchens that we are supporting the homeless, the street kids, as well as the other vulnerable groups, as well as those people who are on tuberculosis, as well as the chronic diseases, who are taking medication. We are supplying them 3 meals a day in the form of those soup kitchens. We are going to ensure that the menu there as well, it talks to the C40 and the EAT implementation plan. And I've heard that the mayors are going to be coming here to sign a declaration around September. I so wish that you insert a clause in that declaration to pin down the city's senior management to implement fully the C40 in their KPIs.
Wow. Okay, that's a great challenge to us. So I was hearing a really neat link between your investment in agroecology and food production, but now increasingly connecting that to the consumption and the menus and your schools as well.
Yes.
So you're really taking a systems approach.
Yes.
And I think the accountability that you encourage there, there is political commitment in the air, but then embedding that commitment into government with measures and holding people to account is extremely important. But time has run out. I've certainly learnt a lot. I look forward to working with each of these panelists and taking these initiatives forward. In terms of resiliency, I think we've done really well despite the sound challenges. So please join me in thanking our incredible panelists. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for coming to this session. It was absolutely amazing to have you with us. Tomorrow we kick off at 9 a.m. with an amazing photographer by the name of Greg Siegel. I'm sure you've heard of him or you've seen him around. And have a fantastic afternoon and evening. Bye.